Hello and welcome to Carlson Coaching. Today I would like to start a line of videos concerning a way to use tarot as a coaching tool. The last videos I made were about counseling, and I just want to pick up one single nuance in it. Those were questions I was asked, and I was talking about the reading that I had. So it wasn't a video session where we could communicate, and maybe there were questions who would come along the moment I explained the cards, but that possibility wasn't given at that moment. Hopefully I will get the possibility to make such a video too, but for the moment being I would like to concentrate on that aspect of using tarot as a tool for coachings. There are many possibilities how to do this, but there is one especially that I like to use, and I would like to explain it in different steps, why I consider it to be such an amazing way to use tarot and coaching at the same moment. What I'm talking about is family constellations. But I want to clarify something first. So in this first video, I want to explain why for me it is not always the typical family constellation that is working, but why I use inner family systems for it. So I can only talk about my region, but over here family system constellations are very often used in two ways. The first one I want to talk about because I want to distance myself from it. People are using a group or trying to reunite a group of people so that the one who makes the constellation can use the other people to put into the positions of the people of the family personalities. So, for example, they need a man for the father, or for some brother, or maybe even for the neighbor, because family doesn't simply mean physical family. Very often, people we consider close to us can also be family. There are two problems concerning using real life people for this, and I'm absolutely against it. So everyone does as he or she likes, but please consider that I am not bringing up this critic just out of fun. So the first one is, a constellation should give us the opportunity to take an overall view of the whole situation. And when we are using people who have more or less the same hate that we have, it is very difficult to get the whole picture, because we're still seeing them on the same hate, and we are not getting like a map that we are looking upon. That is the first, but not the most important problem. The second point is, as a coach, that I cannot guarantee the safety of every person in there. So imagine there is someone who has a problem with his father, and he takes a person to put into the position of the father who also has such a problem. This might trigger a trauma in this second person who is put into that situation, and I cannot take care of the one who makes the constellation and the one who is set into the constellation. So I want to be absolutely sure that the moment I make a constellation with a person, that I can concentrate on that one person, and that my concentration stays undivided on this person, because there's so many traumas I may not know about in a group, that this is a risk I don't want to take, and I don't want to leave the other person with that trauma later on. I know that there are people who say, yes, but later on we're talking about it. But first of all, it is always about the person who does the constellation. And this way, this concentration and this focus on that person will become divided. And for me, this is not a sane and not a safe way to work with constellations. Now, logically, we have the possibility to use figurines. I got those made by a former friend of mine, and I have them in different colors and different height, as you can see. And we could say that this is a good way to use the family constellation when I'm talking about an outer family constellation. It is good until a certain point. So the moment You are using this constellation. So people setting up the other people, how close they are, or are they turning away from each other, and so on, to get an idea to explain what is going on in their family. But it does not mean that it is going to become the solution. So let me try and explain this in an example. Imagine there's a customer, a client coming to me and explaining a situation as follows. Whenever they are invited to meet the whole family, it is the grandmother who is in the middle of all focus. So she wants to talk about not the grandmother, but the client wants to talk to the brother to find out about how the kids are doing, or wants to talk to the father because he had an operation, how he's doing, and so on. And everyone is turning his or her interest onto the grandmother. And whenever someone turns away, the grandmother is going to do something or say something so that the interest is coming back to the person. And during a constellation, she's, for example, saying, okay, this is my grandmother, and all the people are standing around, and all eyes are on the grandmother. This. So each time you see that the eyes are turned on her. And it doesn't matter if it's kids or if it is an adult or whoever. So this is happening. And during constellations, very often people are asked, how could you change the constellation so that it becomes more comfortable for you, so you feel better about it? So maybe the person says, well, if she wasn't in the middle, it's not that no one has the right to talk to her, but not everyone can talk to her, so that there could be communication. So the next question could be, what is going to change if she's not in the middle? And the person says, well, maybe there is one or two who talks to her, but other ones talk to each other, and maybe there is a possibility to have a different kind of group dynamic, and so she's not alone, but the other ones aren't. Well, maybe even the person says, I don't feel alone either, because I see that I have the right to take interest in someone else, and maybe someone else has the possibility to show his interest to myself. So maybe that interest is there in the beginning, but that does not mean that the person isn't in the same situation because of the grandmother who is always taking in all the people that they are crowding around her. This sounds great, but the problem in the situation is the first time this person is going to meet again with the family, and she's going to sense this same constellation turning up with everyone turning around her and looking at her. There is one thing she will find out. She cannot do as she did in the constellation. She cannot just simply turn her away, put her away. This is something that is possible in a constellation, but it is not something that is possible in real life. And the person might sense this as a failure, and might sense this in a way not to feel um, capable of handling a situation. So this is not going to work in a certain way. This is one of the reasons why concerning family constellations, out of family constellation. Now you will see my cat. This is a paw of my cat. She just walks by. Um, sorry, this is necessary. I need my space back. The point is that an outer constellation can help us understanding the problem, and so it is also important to use this kind of constellation, but it will not necessarily help us solving an outside problem. An inside constellation might be more helpful, and I will bring up one of those examples too. So now I gave you a certain idea of what is the flaw in a constellation when it comes to work with it, to change it, when it comes to a family constellation or an outside system constellation. The difference is with the inside constellations, but therefore I would like to explain a little bit what it means to have an inside family system. The same way we have an outer system we live in, we have different thoughts, different opinions inside of ourselves, and they end up sometimes in a certain kind of conflict. All this may result from something that happened in our life in the outside, but very often we cannot really solve a problem in the outside, but we can solve our way to look at the problem, and then it is going to change something inside of ourselves, and it will change something in the outside too in a certain way. This sounds like, I know, esoterical stuff and so on, but honestly, I'm doing this for quite some time and I can only invite people to try it out. So there are different ways to find out about those parts of personalities, and I will use another video to give you different ways to find out about them, and also there how to use maybe tarot already along the way. The only thing I want to talk about for a second is I know that a lot of people, when I say that we have different parts of personality, they think that I am talking about a split personality. We all have this part inside of us where one is maybe a voice of sanity, a voice of critic, and the other one is more playful, and they don't get along quite well in the beginning. And we can find out how to get a good exchange inside of ourselves concerning those different thoughts that come up that maybe also we picked up a lot as we went along and as we grew up. But it is important later on to find out if the thought, the belief, the inner belief is still necessary. Can it be completely healed and completely put away at a certain moment? Do we find our peace with it? Is it a part that we should be listening to and that needs a space inside of ourselves, and so on? So those are things that are very important. And I would like, as an example, to bring up the example of my first customer, my first client that I had. Actually, she came to me because she heard that I was using cards. And the subject in the beginning was a completely different one. Will my boyfriend come back? Think that this is a question that people who read cards get quite some very often. And we found out that the problem wasn't that he was gone, but that she was not happy with something that went on inside of herself. And I was using those same figurines that I showed here. I was using them for constellation. At that moment, I made a tarot reading, and later on, we passed over to the figurines for the constellation. And I would just like to bring that up, show that as an example, how amazing something like that can work. So when I started working with her to find out what parts inside of her were living in that conflict, one of my questions was about her self-confidence. I didn't use this in that moment, but it was a round piece of wood. So imagine that this is the circle that we were working with. Like, this is your inside world. And whatever we are going to put up, we are going to put it up in this inside circle. And so I asked her about her self-confidence, and she picked one of the figurines, this one, cute little guy. And she put him, I'm trying to put it the way that you can see what happened. So there are his eyes, and she put him like that on the border of the circle, watching or looking outside. And as we went along, we found out that she had an inner critic, and her inner critic. So I asked her, who is her inner critic? And she picked another figurine. and put him in the middle. And the first reaction she had was, when I saw this, she was, oh, certainly I did something wrong. Should I put them in a different way? And I had to explain to her that everything was okay, and that she did exactly what she had to do, and that we were going to work with what we just had in front of us. And I didn't even have to say something. The moment she saw the picture with this huge critic in the middle, she said herself, well, it's logical that whenever I want to be sure, I am asking from the outside, I'm looking outside, because if this is my self-confidence, it has to get information from the outside world to be sure that my confidence is correct, is right. Because if I turn inside, then I face my big critic, and he doesn't have anything else to do than to criticize. So I asked her how she would like this to be in her inside. And then she said, okay, how do you want your self-confidence to be? And then she took this one, so she took this one away and put him in the middle. So just a small one away. Said, I want him in the middle. My self-confidence is the first thing I want to rely on. So I want him to be to grow strong and tall. And what about the inner critic? And she took one, not the whole, not the completely small one, and kept him close. And that one was looking at the self confidence, because she explained to me at that moment, I don't want the inner critic to be gone completely. He's important, or she's, if it's a he or she, she's important, because elsewhere I am so confident that I might do things that are really dangerous, or where I'm saying, I don't care, I can handle this. And a certain kind of critic is something that is necessary. So I made pictures of those two constellations. So the one how she sends it, and the one she wanted it to be. And I sent those over to her phone. And we're talking about it through the whole situation. And later on, she explained to me that whenever she was in a situation where she was about to ask, or when she asked the opinion of someone in the outside, she saw this picture turning up, the one with the small one who looked to the outside and then turning into the big guy. And alone that this was triggering her each time when she asked something, when she asked for an opinion, she found out that this image was doing something to her in the inside, because images are changing something in our subconscious. And one of the situations that she explained to me was that one day they went out with friends, and she had put up a dress, and she comes down the stairs and she's asking one of her friends, "How do you think this is? How do I look?" And the moment she said it, she thought of the two guys, of the blue guys, and she was already laughing. And this friend said, "Oh, I don't know. I think you should use something else. Should dress up with something else than this." And then she took a look into the mirror and said, "Okay, thank you for your opinion, but I like it." And that was the first time that she went out without these doubts, and she enjoyed herself. And because of the way that she enjoyed herself, well, she was feeling happy, and she was also presenting that, and people could sense this, and it changed her life with this first step. I think that quite some coaches or even therapists are absolutely aware that this is working. And even if there may be people who say that this is just for kids and it's just playing around, I have a saying for this. We can never take playing too seriously. It is important that we use all this in a playful way. If we have learned, or if I had learned something in my life, is the more it made fun, the easier it was for me to learn something. And it is the same for our inside than for anything else that we can learn in life. Or even if you study something, if it makes fun, if you love doing it, it is easier. And if you love working on yourself in a way that is not strict and not deadly serious, it will be easier because you can bring in your fantasy, you can bring in your imagination, and all this is part of ourself and of our possibilities and of our resources from our brain and from our psyche. And this is why stuff like this is working. So this was a first idea of how you can use, especially with the inner system. My next video will be about how to find out about those parts. I will bring up 2 or 3 opportunities, 2 or 3 possibilities, and also show you how I use from time to time, depending on the situation, how I use tarot for something like this. Thank you for watching.